The Nobel Committee goes quantum. You're watching Techstrong, gang. Hi, everyone. Happy Thursday. Man, this week's flying by here. Thursday. Mike, you're still in Barcelona, right?
I am. Last time I checked, and let me look out the window. But yeah, I am.
All right. It's a week in Barcelona. Good for you. Guys, we've got a great show for you out there today on this beautiful Thursday. We are going to talk a little quantum, a little AI, a little Atlassian. Got some good people to talk about it with. Let me quickly introduce you to him. I mentioned Mike is joining us in Barcelona. Mike Vizard, happy with the Yankees win the other night. We've got Jon Swartz out in Silicon Valley, whose voice is a little sketchy, so we'll try to go easy on him. And of course, joining us, my friend Jeff Reich. Jeff Reich. Jeff is the CEO of the IDSA, and always a pleasure to have him on here. And we found out today Jeff was a physics major in school.
Larger than quantum.
Yes, much larger. Billions and billions. But so how apropos to have you on here. So Mike, the Nobel Committee awarded the other day their physics awards to three physicists who did some really, foundational work in the mid-'80s that kind of forms the backbone, the basis for what we call, quantum computing today.
Which I think is maybe slightly overdue after all this time, but I guess better late than never. But we haven't seen quantum computing machines in the mainstream, at least. We've seen them being used in various use cases in pharmaceuticals and some other places. It's interesting and compelling. But Alan, you wrote this article on Techstrong.it, and as you were mentioning, it kind of does sort of make quantum feel real. They got a Nobel Prize for it, and this is now a real thing. We are computing with the fundamental elements of nature.
So we've been computing with the fundamental elements of nature all along, haven't we? Everything comes from nature. But that being said, rumor was they were holding off on awarding the Nobel until we did have a commercial quantum computer, but they were afraid that there would be no one left on the committee. By the time that happened, they wanted to, I'm only kidding, they didn't really say that. But yeah, it is a long time coming. This was work done 40 years ago. And hard to believe, 40 years ago this was done, and we are still waiting for Q-Day. That's the bad news. The good news, Q-Day is closer than ever, so they say. We have, I think over the last 3 to 5 years, we've actually made a lot of breakthroughs in qubits and, all the multi-qubit machines. And of course, post-quantum cryptography algorithms are pretty widespread these days. But, I think, number one, honoring these three men who did this foundational work on which everything we're doing now is based is long overdue, and congratulations to them. Secondly, I do think it's another drumbeat in the steady drum roll of quantum being real and Q-Day coming. Third, I think most of our people out here are not really sure, other than post-quantum cryptography, right? Breaking down encryption. What are we going to use quantum computers for? Jeff, if you don't mind.
Well, sure. I'd love to expound on this, because quantum computers, I think, in the long run can be used for everything. But, just like every other computer, it's a matter of cost, resources, and availability. But I think from a security and technology perspective, you're going to see quantum computing further embrace what we do for connectivity, because keep in mind, quantum particles can pass through objects. There is no physical barrier to them. Now, that's an abstract for most people, but we're going to get there with computing. However, and our second topic coming up later on with AI, it's directly tied to that because both of them require a whole bunch of cooling and a whole bunch of power, of electricity. And we haven't solved that problem yet. I would offer, let's target AI and quantum towards solving our energy issues so that we can get more quantum computing and Q-Day can be sooner. But the sort of things you're going to see coming out of this, I think when you talk about artificial atoms, I think you're going to see, depending on ethical, how it's looked at by different organizations, I think you're going to see gene therapy come out of this. I think you're going to see new drugs that can target specific issues and ailments and conditions without having other side effects come out of this. From a technology and computing perspective, I think what you're going to see tied to AI is a faster implementation of whatever it is we need to do with computing. And I know that's a very broad statement, but there really are no bounds. If you want to focus on how quickly can we encrypt something, how quickly can we transmit it, how quickly can we calculate what it's going to be, all of that's going to come out of it at or around Q-Day. I also think quantum entanglements, which aren't necessarily mentioned in the prize notification, at least I didn't see it when I read it, are going to give us a security condition that we haven't been able to achieve before. And if you don't know what a quantum entanglement is, and this is some of the work they did 40 years ago, you have two elements, not chemistry elements, but two objects. And there is a quantum entanglement between the two. Anything you do to affect the first will have the same effect on the second. And anytime you make any change to that entanglement, including simply observing it, the entanglement breaks. Now, isn't that a wonderful way to have a secure connection that says anytime it's even observed, it breaks?
So
now,
this is where I need a little mind expanding, mushrooms or something to help me out here. The quantum entanglement thing, right? Because it could be a particle in another galaxy or another, star system, but yet the entanglement is instantaneous. But of course, when it's observed, the entanglement is broken. So if we can't observe it, how do we know it was there? And I know they've gotten experiments that show this, but I stopped smoking dope a long time ago, and I can't wrap my head around this.
Well, maybe you stopped too soon.
That's the problem. There you go.
But if you go back to Heisenberg, who really started the whole concept of quantum mechanics, the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, really, that's where it came from. There is a cat in a box. I know I'm going back to, I think many people have heard this metaphor, right? There's a cat in a box. Is a cat dead or alive? Well, you won't know until you open the box. You observe it. Therefore, you break the entanglement that was there that said, is it one or the other? Both conditions were true because you didn't know what it was. And then as soon as you observe it, you know it's broken and you know which one now exists. I don't know if that helps, but with the entanglement, the good news about quantum entanglements is, as I said, they can go through physical barriers. Space and distance means nothing. So you can have a quantum entanglement with two particles on different sides of the universe, and anything that affects one affects the other. And anytime any change occurs to the entanglement, it's done, which means you've opened the box and looked at the cat. Does that help?
Hey, can I mention something that maybe it's a parallel, but what I find so interesting about this in terms of what these three gentlemen have done in terms of, I think, Alan, you mentioned the artificial atom, which bridges quantum theory and yes, quantum theory and engineering hardware. The thing that kind of I see a parallel is a couple of weeks ago, I went to Stanford. I was at this reception basically about the semiconductor industry and the members, the guys who made it all possible. And I think I see this parallel here too. And I remember at the Stanford ceremony, they were talking about the Fair children and what begat from the Fair children, like Intel, AMD, Altera, etc. And I think this kind of marks that same type of moment where you acknowledge the work of the people who build the construction of the house, the foundation of the house, and makes everything possible. And it seems like this was long overdue, but it kind of gives me the sense of deja vu about what's happened in terms of the long forgotten people decades from now when AI takes off.
So for those who were under 60, Fairchildren refers to Fairchild Semiconductor.
Yes. Yes,
Right.
exactly.
Yes.
Sorry about that. No, I'm dating myself and Mike. I know, and all of us. But I'm thinking about
Mhm.
Robert Noyce, Gordon Moore. I mean, these were giants. You all know who they are.
Sure.
And I think
The
I wish
Fairchild.
more people knew who they were, right? And I think these
Mhm.
three guys, maybe they will be forgotten, but their place in history will be in the firmament forever.
So I have questions. Do I need all this current AI stuff if someday I have quantum computing? Will quantum supersede AI, or will these two things kind of
No,
live side by side?
I think AI becomes the catalyst for quantum, right? And so, you've got power squared between the two of them. That, because some people say for AI to reach its ultimate goal, and if you believe the ultimate goal is superintelligence or AGI or what have you, you're truly going to need quantum kind of power, quantum kind of computing resources for AI to reach that goal. So they actually are very complementary and feed off each other. I did 2 interviews with a father and daughter. The daughter's a PhD out of Stanford. Actually, her PhD's in AI, but she's CEO of this quantum computing company called QU Secure. And her dad, Dave, who's also very well versed in quantum. And the thing that blew my mind is when you look at qubits, right, and which is the fundamental byte of the quantum world, of the quantum computing world, right? In conventional bytes, computer bytes, it's 0 or 1, right? So if you have, let's say, a 64-bit processor, you have 64 different bits that could be 0 or 1. So how many permutations of that can you have? Well, 64 times 64. Excuse me, 64 times 128, because each one could have 2 different states, right? 64 to 128. A qubit, 64-bit qubit, let's say, has more computing permutations, has more computing power than what we compute in a year in traditional computing, basically, right? Because it could be both or neither, right? There's actually 3. So the amount of computing power that a quantum computer brings to it, and I didn't do this justice. Go back and look at my interview with Dave. I think it was a Black Hat. But the amount of computing power that it brings to bear virtually equals the entire computing power in the world for a year right now. So, what's that going to do to AI?
But if I could offer, in aeronautics, there's a term, all force and no vector. That means you have a whole bunch of power. A rocket or a jet takes off, but you're not steering, you don't have navigation, you're just going. To me, that's quantum computing. AI adds that guidance and altitude and direction.
Excellent. I mean, so here's the bottom line, though. We've mentioned some of the uses: protein folding, pharmaceutical, and biomed kind of things. Of course, post-quantum cryptography and cryptographic kind of stuff. Modeling, weather modeling, and what those kinds of things. I mean, just anything where you need that massive amount of ability of computing power on the head of a pin. Quantum does that for you. However, let me also say, and it's in my article, that we haven't solved all the issues quite yet, right? Basically, for the qubits for quantum computers to be working now, they've got to be like flawless or something like that. And we are developing what they call fault-tolerant qubits, which will be easier to manufacture, easier to maintain, right? The work these guys did in 1985 is they had to have things in a superconductor kind of environment at damn near absolute 0 kelvins, and there's a locket junction or something where the magic happens. I'm in over my head there, but in any event, right? Fault tolerant qubits make it a little easier for quantum computation to be done without all of those things. There are, Jeff, you mentioned power, the power consumption and cooling and all of that stuff to bring it to absolute zero and all that. Huge, right? So this isn't the kind of thing you're going to just run because you feel like doing, you want to do some basic trigonometry, right? You could use your slide ruler. This is an expensive proposition, and so the rewards have to be equally as valuable.
Does anybody know? I mean, maybe Jeff, so how exactly do I write software for this thing? I mean, there isn't a traditional compiler, right? So there's got to be something that I'm using to access those qubits that Alan's talking about. But what is that?
So first of all, it doesn't really exist yet. So it's hard to say what's actually going to work. But I believe what you're going to see is I think compiler is going to be a very quaint term when we get to quantum computing. Because I believe what you're going to do, and once again, I think AI and quantum are tightly coupled. You are going to be able to take a concept and say, here's what I want to be able to create. I believe AI can create the programming that you need to run on quantum. In fact, I don't think right now a human can comprehend writing a program that can truly take advantage of that advanced speed. That's why I think AI is going to have to be the very next step, if not permanent step, to doing that.
Wow. All right. So you're telling me the universe is right here on my thumbnail, perhaps, right? A little Animal House there.
Animal House, yes.
Yeah. All right. Hey, we're a little overtime, though. We need to take a break. Let's come back. And again, we're going to talk a little AI now. Big news from IBM. You're watching Techstrong, gang.
You've earned it. The spotlight, the responsibility, the weight of teams, companies, and entire industries fall on your shoulders. Lives depend on your decisions, your home life included. At work, you're protected, physically and digitally. Nothing gets through your team without a fight. But in a globally connected world, everyone sees you, including those who mean to cause you and your organization harm. And now home, your sanctuary. Attackers see an opportunity. Your digital front door is wide open. And what compromises your home can breach your boardroom. Because the devil's greatest trick isn't targeting your workplace firewall. It's convincing you that your personal life isn't at risk. Black Cloak. Digital executive protection, defending the new attack surface. Your personal life.
Hey folks, we're back, and yes, as Alan alluded, we're going to have a little chat about AI. This time it's IBM making some news with a partnership with Anthropic, and they are going to integrate the Claude tools into their software development projects, going to show up in mainframes, all kinds of fun stuff that John covered. But John, do you get any sense of irony here that, the folks who gave us Watson are now reaching out to get some help from Anthropic?
Yeah, I know. That's a pretty big thing, that symbolism, right? I mean, exactly. IBM claimed that they were the forefrunters, the builders of AI, in a sense that they brought it to commercial use. In a sense, they're going to Anthropic, and Anthropic is gladly going to help them. So yes, it's an interesting deal in a sense that IBM greatly expands its AI capabilities through a startup. And it also, for Anthropic, I think it's incredibly significant and plays into this narrative that Anthropic has been pushing very hard lately to get into enterprises. There are a lot of companies trying to get into the enterprise through AI capabilities, and with large language models like Claude becoming more central to business software platforms. In a sense, Anthropic's been making this push into the market of enterprises as kind of the go-to vendor for large organizations. In fact, they've been courting corporate clients since they launched Claude Enterprise in September. They claim they have 300,000 business customers, and one of the biggest, I think the largest enterprise agreement to date, was announced Monday by Anthropic, and it's with Deloitte. So that would bring Claude AI models to nearly 500,000 employees at Deloitte. It's also, on top of that, Anthropic has forged ties with Databricks in a partnership they announced, I believe, in March. which is targeting businesses looking to develop their own AI agents. There's kind of this divergence between what Anthropic is trying to do. They claim they are now like the enterprise go-to solution versus OpenAI, which is stressing the consumer side. But it is interesting that IBM chose to work with them, given the history of Watson and whatnot. And I think we're going to see more of these types of deals between the legacy and between the startups. It's just really going to be almost like a weekly occurrence, I think.
Isn't it refreshing to see an AI deal where there's not a couple of $100 billion thrown around? Remember? So, hey, I've got my Shimmy Says this afternoon at 2:30. It's Shimmy Says when the bubble burst, set to the tune of Led Zeppelin's When the Levee Breaks. And there's also a companion article to this up on Techstrong IT that I'll send you to as well. Great. Everybody, to me, this sounded a little Barney-ish. I don't know if the guys were in purple when they were up on the stage. We're all working together. It is ironic that the folks who brought Watson, the first kind of AI we thought about, are now. But IBM's like that. They'll put anything in their chest. They got the pipe. If you give them product to put in their pipe, they put it in their pipe. But here's the real question, guys. I don't want to, stay tuned for my Shimmy Says this afternoon. But when half of the growth in the US GDP for the year is due to data centers and AI deals, half of the growth, there's more money being spent on data center and AI deals this year in the US than consumer spending. Consumer spending is usually 70% of our GDP. But there's more of that being spent on data centers and AIs. But here, the downside is, if you look at the amount of money we've spent on data centers and AIs, it roughly equals the entire GDP of Singapore, which is a pretty sizable GDP. I think it's $500 billion plus or something like that. The amount of revenue that AI has generated roughly equals Somalia. Okay, Singapore to Somalia. I know there are a lot of analysts out here who were in friggin' high school in 2000. And they didn't live through the dot-com bubble burst. And they haven't lived through the real estate market crashes. And they maybe have been through the Great Recession, though we in tech, we kind of skated that, right? This is a bubble. And everybody's jumping on, making Barney announcements and pledging hundreds of billions of dollars that they don't have because they're getting hundreds of billions of dollars from another company who doesn't have it. And that company gives it to this company, and this company gives it to that company. It's Enron all over again. When
Yeah,
this
you feel like
bubble
it's part of.
Go ahead.
It's going to be interesting. We hear these projections of what they're going to spend on data centers, and it's like more than $1 trillion over the next 4 years. And when the reality rubber hits the roads, when we finally get to that point, we're going to find that it's a fraction of what they said because it was impossible. These numbers were just being thrown out there randomly.
To Jeff's point, you don't have enough power to run them or enough cooling to water to cool them. And come on, and that's assuming that we're really going to use it because it's really going to generate money. But here's an interesting thing. And again, stay tuned to my Shimmy Says for this. Past bubbles were funded by debt, brought down the savings and the savings and loan crisis, right? The dot-com, it was all VC money. This bubble here, it was primarily, or at least initially, funded by CapEx from the large tech companies who were sitting on billions and billions of dollars, and now they spent it. But now the second generation of these AI companies, the neo clouds and so forth, they're debt. They're funding with debt. And when this thing, when the music stops, those people who don't have chairs, it's going to be ugly.
Hey, John, are you reminded of the last time IBM partnered this deeply with a small startup company and how that all turned out? So, uh, so I'm like
Go ahead,
thinking back
Mike.
to,
Yes, I know. I know you can't. You know, can I just go back to something that Alan said? Then I'll let Jeff. I'm sorry, Jeff, but it's Silicon Valley. The big question is, it's bubble or it's bubble or boom, right? Well, there are more people now anticipating the bubble to burst. Right now, what they're trying to figure out is where are we in terms of that happening? Are we at 1997 point? Or are we at the 2000 point? Or are we getting even closer? And there are several people I've been asking this of, and they're convinced that within 18 months, we're going to find out in certainty when that happens. Nobody knows, of course, but it's
Right?
inevitable, as Shimmy says.
I would agree with that. I do think that we are it's near to medium term. It's not a long term issue before this bubble bursts for a number of reasons: real estate, power, environmental downstream issues, finding enough talent to be able to manage all this, and then getting to the point of now that we're there, what do we do? Because it's all force and no vector. I'm going to use that one again. We're streaming towards this, and we don't necessarily have an end goal. Right now, the goal is how much money can investors make? That's what this is all about.
And it's
when
fueling the whole stock market.
Yep. And when that breaks, it'll probably break pretty big.
Oh, it's going to be catastrophic. And the thing about it, but here's the real piece that's missing. Where's the killer app? What is going to generate the revenue to justify this kind of spend? Right? I need 10 trillion in revenue to justify a trillion spend. And we're not sure it really works at that level. It's great for writing, helping you write. It's great for some marketing stuff. It's getting better writing code, but geez, I don't know.
Yeah, there's not a
I
lot of
mean,
logic. There's not a lot of logic applied to this. It's all
no,
pipe dream and oh, right. But it's funny, Mike, you mentioning IBM working with startups. When you think about Microsoft, I think about even Apple. Remember they had that partnership with Apple
Mhm.
with Kaleida, Intelligent, whatever the hell that thing was called. And these things kind of went awry. For
the
IBM.
AI train is speeding down the track, and companies are afraid of being left behind when it leaves them.
FOMO.
But they don't know where it's going to end. Is it going to end at a station, or is it going to end in a mountain, without a tunnel?
No, it's
And I
like
think
that meme. I'm sorry, go ahead, Mike.
if you look at the OpenAI numbers, it would suggest that they are also supplementing the cost of everybody's prompts. So every time you put in a prompt, if they charge you $1, it's costing them $4, and they're not
They'll
quite
make it
figured
up
out.
in volume.
Sure, they will.
But that's right out of the dot-com days, right? How many times I heard that in the dot-coms? We'll make it up in volume. It costs, I charge 90 cents. It costs me $1, but I'll make it up in volume.
Well, you hit the nail on the head when you mentioned Enron. I've been thinking about that more and more recently. When I say this doesn't, it's just like froth. It's hype. It's over expectation. It's bullshit, and it's gonna come back to haunt a lot of these guys, and it's inevitable. That's all I really could say about it.
I want to put a positive spin on this, if I can, because it is real and it will benefit
Yeah,
us,
that's
and it
true.
will
Yeah.
happen. It's the investment part of it and how much leverage our economy has on it versus is this ever going to really happen? Because it will.
Yeah, no, look, you know what, Jeff? It took about 10 years after 2000, but we did use up all that dark fiber in all those data centers we built, right? And we need new ones now. So AI is real, but, this is a classic bubble scenario. And what's even worse is you've got the U.S. government. We're already 35 trillion or whatever it is in debt. Our administration's all in on this, taking stakes in these companies. When those stakes go south, someone's gonna have to answer for Santino, Carlos. And
I want to make sure I understand what you're saying. You're saying that, because we have AI and we can all now write better emails, that we're not going to move the GDP needle, right?
right. Basically, yeah, pretty much. I mean, here's a flip side. How bad would things be if we didn't have AI and data centers to spend money and juice things up around here? There was an article in the Times the other day that we really have two economies right now. We have an AI economy, which is booming, right, on this kind of irrational exuberance. And then we have the rest of the economy, which quite frankly isn't doing so good, right? And this is it's a scary proposition. It's a scary proposition. And here's another thing, and I've said this before. When I hear people start telling me it's a new paradigm, the old rules don't apply anymore, things are different this time, man, that's when I keep my hands over my pockets, because you're not getting none of my money. Fools in their money. Anyway, good. Yes, the irrational, but this is true. This is irrational. So you know what it was? I think I was younger and dumber back in 2000, right? And I was like, oh, Greenspan, he's putting his foot on this. He's killing it. I'm about to retire, goddammit. But, in retrospect, he probably wasn't wrong then, and we're probably not wrong now.
Yeah, by the way, I was in that same boat with you then. But the second thing is I teach part-time. I've been teaching for a long time. 90% of what I teach hasn't changed in 30 or 40 years.
Yeah.
So for every new thing we get, we still have to go back to what are the fundamental principles and do they apply or not? And yes, they do.
Yeah, agreed. All right. Hey, I think we're out of time on this segment. Let's come back and we're going to get a report from Mike about what he did on his Barcelona vacation. You're watching Techstrong, gang.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.
All right, folks, as Alan was saying, I am here in Barcelona at the Atlassian Europe 2025 conference. They are talking up their Rovo AI agents that are going to be embedded into every piece of software they have, and they're only going to charge $5 per user. So it's going to be interesting to see how all that comes together, given our last conversation about the cost and the pricing. But what they are saying is that they're going to use this MCP protocol that Anthropic developed along with a graph to integrate all their AI agents, and these AI agents will all know about each other, and they will suggest and help us all do various tasks across their entire portfolio of collaboration software. It includes project management software that people use, Jira, Trello. We are big users of Trello here at Techstrong Group. And it's going to change the way we work. But it was interesting with what they were saying is don't go after big projects. They were saying a lot of the issues we're having with AI is, especially as noted by those folks at MIT, is that a lot of companies went out and tried to hit a home run with AI. They're saying play small ball. They're saying automate existing workflows, just move them forward and get some AI muscle memory going and understanding of how to use this stuff and when it works and doesn't work. And that's going to be the path to success, which frankly struck me as, common sense, but maybe that is the way to go with all this stuff is just give it to everybody and they will find ways to use it. And then we'll figure out what the big ROI is later. Alan, what do you say?
They'll make it up in volume. Look, so agentic AI agents, I think are going to be the make or break of this generation of AI, right? I think generative AI has its uses and we've explored them and we're going to continue to explore them. But when we look at, agentic AI, these agents that are going to, like, let's say Trello, make using our Trellos easier and stuff like that, or workflows that will help us publish articles, on our sites, Mike. It sounds great in practice, but as you know, we haven't been able to get it done in reality. And that's where rubber's going to meet the road. I mean, now, I think this is a classic case of Atlassian, keeping expectations low, saying keep it simple. But it also reminds me when DevOps first started, right? Enterprises didn't adopt DevOps. People adopted DevOps. Small teams adopted DevOps, right? For a long time, you had the Spotify squad model, the Amazon 2-pizza model, right? And so, it was good for a team of 10 to 12 people. There was a huge jump.
With a similar message as the CEO of the browser company is here, and the deal hasn't officially closed between Atlassian and them, but he was saying the same thing about this forthcoming AI browser of theirs. Well, it's forthcoming in the sense that, it works on the Mac today and it'll be on Windows sometime next year. But it was the same thing. He was saying onesie twosies, people will adopt this to get rid of their tabs on their browsers and have a more integrated workflow experience. But he wasn't expecting big companies to kind of sign big deals as much as it was going to be led from the bottom up, and people are just going to experiment with stuff and move the ball forward. I think that too is probably the way to go. And I think maybe we're just trying to come up with some sort of prescriptive approach to AI, and we should just let 1,000 flowers bloom and see what happens.
Now who's over 60?
Wow. It's interesting. Yeah, this is kind of the same thing that Atlassian did in Anaheim. I remember going there several months ago. And it's just a very more practical, reasonable approach. And I think it's the right approach. And I actually think that they're onto something. And rather than shoot for the sky, let's just see what happens, right? Let's see what happens from the rank and file and see where it grows. And, it's that whole MIT, again, by the way, everyone is referencing that MIT report. It's like it's getting torched by everyone, but who kind of took it literally for what it was. I mean, but if you read between the lines, it was no immediate effective profitability instantly. And it was, this is going to take time. And agents, maybe this is the year of AI agents. I keep hearing that. Now I'm hearing some people say, well, maybe next year. We'll see.
We shall see.
I'm like, I just don't really see yet. Like, all right, let's say we do have all these AI agents, and I've got 20 and you've got 10 and the other guy's got 50, and we're all going to put these AI agents to work, and somehow or other, they're all going to find each other and negotiate with each other, and there'll be some sort of handoff and something magical will happen and it will all get orchestrated. Maybe, but I don't see that happening in the next 6 months.
The crazy thing is, like, a company, like, I won't mention a company by name, but there are several candidates then announce an AI agent product only to then change and say, well, in a couple more months, we have a new version. And this must be driving people in IT crazy. I mean, how do you stay ahead of this, of all these fastballs coming at you, or these curveballs, in many cases,
Right.
And and it just doesn't make sense. It's just again, it's baked into the hype.
Especially if you've got a CEO who's standing around telling everybody that AI is going to change the entire economy and the world that we were living and working in. The poor IT guy's probably looking at him going, I don't know what magazines you're reading, but not in my world.
So, I think AI will change our economy. As Alan referenced earlier, I'm not certain in a positive way in the short term because of the exuberance. But John, to your point, so let's go ahead and say we're all kind of admitting our ages. And by the way, I think I win that contest. But the days of how does IT keep up with more fastballs coming at them, they have to. The days of no, slow down, I can't handle that much, doesn't work anymore. The days of maintenance, who heard of a maintenance window anymore? When's the last time you heard that? But that was the law, 20 years ago.
Yeah,
I think speed and volume are going to increase. They're here to stay. So we need to adapt. And it could be that we use agentic IA to help ourselves to do that.
Yeah, no, it's just I guess I'll age date myself again when you're talking about Moore's law. That's like blown out of the water with this with the current environment. Everything is based on speed, adapt or die, more so than ever before. I think that's what terrifies people. The fact that they're trying to get ahead of something that they can never get ahead of. They're always playing catch up.
It's interesting stuff. Interesting stuff. Anyway, Mike, thanks for the report from Barcelona. How are the tapas, the paella?
The food is lovely as always. The weather's been great, and I could live here.
You and me both.
Mhm.
Okay. Adios from Barcelona. Jeff, John, thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us today. As usual, we have full Techstrong TV immediately following our gang episode. And a reminder again, 2:30 live on X and on LinkedIn. I'll be doing my Shimmy Says. We'll dive into this AI bubble business. And got a lot more to do. And of course, we'll be back tomorrow with our week wrap-up Friday show for Techstrong Gang. Until then, though, on behalf of John, Mike, Jeff, and all of the gang folks here at Techstrong, have a great day, everyone. We're out.